All right, our speaker today is Rabbah Gila Caine, who's visiting us from Temple Beth Ora here in Edmonton. Rabbah Gila will be sharing insights around Tu B'Shavat, did I say that correctly? Which is the Jewish New Year of Trees, which will take place on the 25th of January. Thank you, Janice. Tansei, hello, bonjour. We acknowledge that the land on which we gather is a traditional meeting ground and home for many Indigenous peoples, including Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, and Nakota Sioux. Land recognition calls us to acknowledge that we are Treaty 6 people, to remember our responsibility to deepen our understanding of the treaty, to participate in and support the ongoing process of truth, reconciliation, and healing. When we come in the door of this building, we pass a poster with 150 acts of reconciliation. Let's each make a commitment to stop and choose at least one action we can take towards reconciliation at the beginning of this new year. Welcome to Westwood. We are a Unitarian Universalist congregation supporting each other in our own spiritual journeys, drawing on the wisdom of many religions and guided by shared principles. We are a community open to all races, genders, sexual orientations, ages, abilities, and incomes. We are one of many congregations across the country and the world. My name is Rebecca Patterson. My pronouns are she and her. I'm your service leader this week, and I'm glad you joined us here today. Our tech team today consists of Hannah and Bill Lee online, and our assistant is David Williamson, who is also our very much appreciated coffee host. And I see that there's already coffee if anyone wants to sip during the service. After the service, we invite all of you to visit over coffee, tea, and a special platter of tree fruits in honor of the Jewish New Year of Trees. Next week, our series, Making Meaning in Liminal Times, will continue with the Reverend Karen Fraser Gitlitz and her talk, To Be or Not to Be, and Chat GPT. Dennis is going to read our opening words from Zoomland, and then I will light the flame. Okay, Dennis, we're ready. Thank you.
We bid you welcome, who come with weary spirit seeking rest, who come with troubles that are too much with you, who come hurt and afraid. We bid you welcome, who come with hope in your heart, who come with anticipation in your step, who come proud and joyous. We bid you welcome, who are seekers of new faith, who come to probe and explore, who come to learn. We bid you welcome, who enter into this hall as a homecoming, who have found here room for your spirit, who find in this people a family. Whoever you are, whatever you are, wherever you are on your journey, we bid you welcome.
Thank you, Dennis. So to our Dennis and our other friends on Zoom, if you have a chalice to light, this is the time to bring it forward. I'll now light our UU flame with words by Albert Telander. We hallow this time together by kindling the lamp of our heritage. So now we're going to sing together For the Beauty of the Earth. And Janice is going to play us a little introduction, and we know this one really well, so we'll launch right in. Please stand in body or in spirit. At this time in our service, we pause to reflect on our week. We recall the milestones, the joys, concerns, and sorrows, the changes in our lives, those who need our healing thoughts, and the joys in our lives that we would like to share. Community is deepened by sharing with each other what is in our hearts. Wow, that's lots of candles today. Please join me in the affirmation. May the light of these candles inspire us to use our power to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to serve the spirit of truth in loving affection and trusting hope. Our offerings of money and volunteer service are the essential elements that sustain our congregation and this place of worship. If you wish to donate online to Westwood, please follow the directions on the slide. We also have a donation box somewhere in the room. It's blue. And if you donate in person today and you would like a receipt, please fill out an envelope. You'll probably find one in the back of one of the chairs in front of you. And fill in your personal information for a tax receipt. Let us join together and sing From You I Receive. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. Before I introduce Rabbah Gila, I have a couple of readings that she provided to me to do with our topic today. The first one comes from Daniel 4, verse 7. In the visions of my mind in bed, I saw a tree of great height in the midst of the earth. The tree grew and became mighty. Its top reached heaven, and it was visible to the ends of the earth. Its foliage was beautiful, and its fruit abundant. There was food for all in it. Beneath it, the beasts of the field found shade, and the birds of the sky dwelt on its branches. All creatures fed on it. No, it was from the Old Testament, the book of Daniel. Yeah, verse 7, yeah. Verse 4, excuse me. And our second one, I think it comes from, is it called a Mishram?
Go ahead, Rabbah. That's a midrash.
Midrash, okay. Which is kind of a commentary, right, on?
Myth and commentary, legend, story. All of the above.
Okay, myth, legend, commentary, story, all of the above. All right. Look at God's work, for who can straighten what he has twisted? That comes from Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 13. When the Blessed Holy One created the first human, he took him and led him around all the trees of the Garden of Eden and said to him, look at my works, how beautiful and praiseworthy they are. And all that I have created, it was for you that I created it. Pay attention that you do not corrupt and destroy my world. If you corrupt it, there is no one to repair it after you. Born and raised in Jerusalem, Rabbah Gila Caine graduated the Hebrew University with an MA in Contemporary Judaism and received her rabbinic ordination at the HUC-JIR's Israeli program in 2011. She now serves as rabbi at Temple Beth Ora congregation in Edmonton, where she lives with her husband, children, and 2 cats. One of her children is one of my, am I allowed to say, a favorite student of mine from days past. Her name is Shaked. Apart from nerding out on Jewish texts and ritual, she loves eating ice cream with her kids and riding her bike with her whole family. So, Rabbah Caine.
Thank you very much for the introduction and for inviting me here. And thank you to everyone who's here today. Shaked, my daughter, I didn't know if I was going to say it, but she's not here, so I can say it. So both my kids are named after trees. It's very common in Israel to name your children after plants. Shaked is an almond tree, and Alon, my son, is an oak tree, right? So Shaked is also the tree of this festival of Tu B'Shvat because it's the first tree that blooms in the winter, right? So we don't have snow in Israel. Well, there is a bit of snow, but not Edmonton snow. But it's cold in the winter, right? And then around this time of year, when most trees are bare, the Shaked, the Shkediya, the almond tree suddenly blooms. So everything's kind of, it's green there in the winter. The summer is brown, the winter is green, but you don't have so many trees flowering, and suddenly you see the almond tree flowering, and then you know there's some hope. That's the light coming back, okay? That's the light coming back over there. So Tu B'Shvat, I'll begin with the name of and please let me know when I'm out of time. Okay, so I'll kind of talk, and then you say you have 2 more minutes to go, okay? So Tu B'Shvat, the name itself actually tells us when we're supposed to celebrate. The name of it just means the 15th day of the month of Shvat. So the month of Shvat is the month that we're going to be entering in a few days. This Thursday, we begin the new month of Shvat. And then the 15th day is the middle of the month. It's just 2 words about the Jewish calendar, okay, so we understand. The Jewish calendar is solar and lunar. Okay, so we have to follow both of these things. We follow the solar calendar in the sense that Tu B'Shvat will always happen in the middle of the winter. Passover will always happen in the spring, okay, so we follow the sun. We also follow the moon. So the first day of the month is always the new moon. And the middle of the month is always the full moon. So by looking at the sky, I know where I am in the month, right? Because I see the moon. So most of our festivals happen on the full moon. Okay? That makes sense, right? That's when there's light outside at night and you can go dancing, okay? So Tu B'Shvat is the 15th of the month of Shvat. It's the full moon festival of the month of Shvat. And the question is, what are we celebrating on this festival? So what I'll do today is I'll just give you a few texts. I'll kind of read a few texts and we'll look at the way this festival developed, because this festival, as are many other festivals and all festivals that we celebrate, I mean, most festivals we celebrate, but Tu B'Shvat, you can really see how it's layered like a cake, okay? I'll begin with a very ancient layer, and then we'll follow to what we celebrate today. And what we're celebrating today encompasses all of the history, but with this festival in particular, you can see how each generation or each period focuses on a different aspect of this. So we begin with the fact, I'm going back to the Mishnah, okay? Mishnah is a text that was written, codified around 2,000 years ago. I'll go back to the Mishnah where we read that we have 4 new years in our calendar. I think today we have 5 new years already, but 4 new years in our calendar, okay? So the 1st of Nisan would be around that time of Passover. That's the new year for kings and for festivals. That's the ancient new year. If you go back into the Bible, into the Torah, you'll see the names of the months, and we're actually talking about a new year that begins in the spring. That's one new year. The other new year is the new year that begins around the time of Tishrei. This is the new year that you might hear people celebrating nowadays, Rosh Hashanah. That's the new year that begins in the autumn. We brought that with us after we were in Babylonia, okay? because that's when they celebrate the new year. A lot of beautiful myths around that new year. That's the new year of years, okay? Then we have the new year of Elul, which is a month before Tishrei. It was for the tithing of animals, okay? This is about taxation. Now it's being developed into the new year of relationship with animals, and some of us are working hard on that, which is why I was happy to see our friends here at the back sitting with us. It's nice to have them. And then we have Tu B'Shvat, which is the new year of trees, which happens around the month of Shvat, which is this year. There's of course a big argument: is it on the first of the month of Shvat, the new moon, or the full moon? It's going to be on the full moon. And it started off as a festival of tithing of trees, fruit trees in particular. Okay, so it's a tax festival, or a tax commemorating, like April here, right? April is when we had in our taxes. It's as prosaic as that, okay? Taxation on fruit trees. But even in the ancient times, when they were talking about it in a very prosaic way, they started saying, but why now? Like, what's happening now? We kind of think there might be something hidden behind that, because when they talk about it, they're saying, now because this is the moment when the sap starts rising in the trees, okay? The tree is waking up. We're not seeing it yet. It looks kind of cold and just standing there on the outside, but inside, underneath the earth, inside the tree, something is changing, okay? So it's kind of hinting that something's going to change. Something is waking up, and think about it in your own life at these moments where you feel like something's changing. You don't know what yet, but there's this inner feeling, okay? This is the beginning of Tu B'Shvat, okay? This is the primordial, let's say, place of Tu B'Shvat, of this noticing that there is an awakening, but it's not spring yet. We're not celebrating spring. We're celebrating the fact that winter is turning. So it also relates probably to something in the solstice, okay? It won't happen on the 25th of January every year. This is this year. That's when it coincides. But it will always happen on the new moon of Shvat. This is the first layer of Tu B'Shvat, the first layer we know of, okay? The second layer of Tu B'Shvat deals with, it still deals with fruit. So the idea of fruit will continue for many generations. But the second layer of Tu B'Shvat deals with fruit, not in relation necessarily to the trees, because at this point, the Jewish people had been dispersed from the land of Israel. And in all our festivals, we find ways of maintaining a connection with the land, even though we might be in Morocco or in France or in Germany, still people needed to maintain a form of relationship with the land. And we find we did it in many ways, in liturgy and in practice, and through our festivals. And Tu B'Shvat was a festival that held this connection with eating of fruit, okay? It became a festival where you remember the land of Israel by eating fruit, and specifically fruit that people knew grew in the land of Israel. So, can I hold the bowl here for a second? It's so beautiful. But thank you for bringing these fruits. So for instance, people, if they would find a pomegranate, that would be amazing. Not many opportunities to find a pomegranate in medieval Germany, okay, for instance, but perhaps Jews in Morocco or Iraq would have pomegranates, but dates could travel, right? You could dry dates and they traveled. So people started eating dry fruit, okay? Because that was the only way before, containers with refrigerated containers were able to allow us to have tangerines here in the middle of the winter, which is amazing and crazy. But dried fruit was a way. So you start seeing customs of Jews around the world eating dried fruit on this festival, and specifically fruit from Israel. So dates, dates, what do you call it? No, these are dates. These are, what do you call them in English? Figs, dried figs, nuts, all sorts of nuts, almonds, all sorts of nuts, grapes, raisins, okay, wine, all these things, even in places where they didn't grow. So it becomes this moment of celebrating a connection with the land in an embodied way by consuming the fruit, right? So it becomes part of your body. So you can get some form of connection with that place. That's the second layer. And the third layer arrives after another catastrophe. Okay, so 1492, there's the big expulsion of Jews from Spain, later Portugal, and that was a center of learning. And it was a big catastrophic moment in the Jewish world, but out of this catastrophe, a whole new way of studying kind of emerged, and new writings, which today we know as the Book of the Zohar. Okay, the Zohar, if you've ever heard of, like it's a mystical Kabbalistic writing, okay, about, they tried reimagining what it means to live in a broken world and how you repair a broken world. I think we could maybe relate to some of that in our days when our world is kind of being a bit broken around us. And what do you do after a world is broken, and how do you heal? How do you put together something that's being shattered, right? So all these beautiful texts were being written over the next few hundred years. And this idea of bringing things together and growing, growing something again, really spoke to their imagination. And we find in the 16th century and onward, people developed a new ritual for Tu B'Shvat. It started off in, where did it start off? You can see images in Turkey already. You can see in the Jew, because where were people dispersed to? So Turkey, a lot were moved to Turkey, Egypt, back to the land of Israel. So in Sfat and Turkey, we start seeing these development of a new ritual for Tu B'Shvat, of a new ritual that focuses on a lot of mystical thinking and on fruit and on wine, but they built a Seder around it. So you know how on Passover Jews have a Seder, a ritualized meal? They created a ritualized meal for the full moon of Shvat. Okay, and this became a huge favorite in the Jewish world over the course of the next 100 years. And today in many synagogues and in people's houses, people have this Seder. We even have people have created many Haggadot, like actual books for this Seder, where you have the ritual and readings that tie the fruit and the wine and this sense of how do we rebuild. Now I'm focusing today on ritual because I just think that's the best way to understand a festival, is to understand the rituals that we do. And I'll just pause and say now that if you have questions, just kind of raise your hand and ask, or we can take some time at the end. I'll just say a few things about this ritual because this is one way of bringing food and like really ritualizing our work with food, okay, in ceremony. So they took the idea of 4 cups, but they said, in the Passover Seder, we have 4 cups. But they changed the meaning of the 4 cups, and they used these 4 cups to talk about the movement between winter and summer, okay? So you start off with white wine as in cold and snow and the whiteness outside, right? And you begin with white wine, and then you add, at the next stop of the Seder, you add a drop of red wine to it. Okay, this symbolizes this something changing. Then you add another bit of red and you have like a mixed springy feeling, and then you end with a red wine. You say a blessing on red wine. That's the summer, that's the heat coming out, okay? So they have this movement. They have this movement with the wine. And that's like the easy stuff. But then they had a whole set of conversations around fruit, around different types of fruit. And these different types of fruit related to different layers of creation and different layers of like the mystical sides of creation. So the first type of fruit would be anything like nuts or fruit that we have to throw the outer, like the shell or the peel, so like oranges or nuts, where you eat the inside, but the outer peel you throw away. And that relates to the material world, the bits of the world that would be like, can die in a sense. These are fruits that need protection because we're so fragile in this side of our life, okay? So we notice this part of the world that needs protection and is transient, and and is material. And so they kind of connected their minds to that through eating these fruits and noticing the shells of these fruits or the peel of these fruits, and about the ability to find meaning even in the mundane, okay? If I translate it to contemporary words, right? How do you find meaning in the mundane? How do you find meaning in shoveling snow, right? That's spiritual work. But how do you find meaning in that? Especially when it's painful, especially when it's difficult, especially when you're dealing with death and dispersion, right? And collapse. How do you do that? So that's one set of fruit that we begin with. And then they would say you would rise. I don't know if I would use the word rise. You would move onto the next part of creation. And then they would look at fruit that speak to us about our ability to create and about the ability of the world to create. And fruit like dates, for instance, where you eat the outer and the inner bit is like the seed. Okay, so the seed holds this idea of the hidden ability to create within all of us and within the world. How do you find a source of creation? Because the source of creation is also the source of healing and rebuilding. So they would do a meditation around this through fruits, through eating fruits like this, like dates, for instance. And then the final layer, and I'm just giving us like the top of this, right? The 60 seconds on it is, so in Hebrew, there's a difference between yetzirah, which is creation from something, which is something that humans know how to do, right? I can take a piece of wood and create a statue from it. That's creation. But then there's bri'ah, which is creation from nothing, which is something that the divine can do. I can't take nothing and make something. I don't have that ability. Maybe you do, but I don't, right? But the force of life, the divine, God, if you would have it, has this ability. And the fruit that would symbolize that for them were fruit like grapes, for instance. Okay, grapes, you eat the whole thing, right? You eat everything in a grape. So it's the whole thing it's perfection in a sense. Maybe that's why we say a blessing on wine from grapes. Like the blessing is on wine because grapes are perfection in that sense. Okay, so you have this element of the divine in each of us, the divine in all. Wherever you find the divine would be symbolized by fruit that you can eat the whole thing. Okay, so they would speak of. So this ritual it became very abstract, right? Suddenly we become very abstract from tithing the fruit on Tu B'Shvat, right? Actually talking about taxation, to remembering an actual place, to suddenly going to mystical realms. So we see a movement of abstraction and moving into deep mysticism, but still it's all tied to the fruit and to the trees. And in this Seder that they created, they were able to speak of the transition of the season and the transition of ourselves through life through this engagement with fruit, the actual fruit. And it still was fruit that was from the land of Israel. They had to keep that. That's the next layer, okay? Late medieval, early modern. Then we have the two last layers to date. We'll see what happens next. The two last layers. So when there was a big influx of Jews back into the land of Israel at the end of the 19th and early 20th century, people started celebrating the festival of Tu B'Shvat now because they didn't want to sit around tables and eat. They wanted to do something. So they started celebrating by planting trees. Although I'm not quite sure, even in Israel, if you're supposed to plant trees in the end of the winter. You're supposed to do it more in the spring. But they started planting trees on Tu B'Shvat. And that's how I grew up. On Tu B'Shvat, kids would go out and everybody would plant trees everywhere. Planting trees was a big thing. In Jerusalem, where I was born and my first child was born, the city plants a tree for every child that's born, right? So it's a big thing. But Tu B'Shvat was a celebration of going out and planting and planting and planting. That was the thing, to plant as many trees as people could. And it was a big celebration of trees in the sense, and then it could be fruit trees or or other, as long as it was about digging into the ground and putting something in. But over the last, I would say, 30 years, aroundish, 30, more 20, and as the time goes by more and more, it's become a celebration of our relationship with the plant world. Okay, so now this is the final layer for now. As I said, we'll see where it goes from here. It's become a celebration and a time of contemplation and meditation, so altogether of our relationship with the earth in general, okay, and especially of our relationship with plant life. Okay, so it's a time when people really think and do. Okay, so in many Jewish communities of different religious observance and even non-religious Jews, people find ways of engaging in more environmental activity on this time, celebrating, doing much more environmental celebration of the earth at this time, and just being thankful and, finding ways of connecting with the outside world at this time in the winter, around Tu B'Shvat. Although slowly we're adding more, like I said, around Elul in the summer with the animals, and like it's coming into more and more places, but Tu B'Shvat is the big one. It's the big one. Okay, I'll pause here for a moment. Are there questions? Yeah.
Earlier you said that the fruit was from Israel. Now, does the fruit have to physically come from Israel, or can it be fruit that grows here but is also native to Israel?
Yeah, right. So I think, to repeat the question? Right. So did the fruit have to come from the land of Israel, or could it be fruit that grows here but also in the land of Israel, right? So I think the ideal was for people to have fruit come from the land itself, but I'm sure that, as long as it was a date, it was a date, right? If it was a fig, it was a fig. And then you could remember the land of Israel through it, yeah. But it had to be, it should have, so there's 7 species of plants that are considered like sacred, okay? And they signify or symbolize the land of Israel. So it's, I'm just going to translate now from Hebrew. Wheat, barley, geffen, which is grapes, tena, fig, rimon, pomegranate, olives, and dates. Okay, so these are the 7 species of plants that are considered sacred. And then if you could eat anything from those, that would be the best. So like if you had bread with olive oil, that's a good way of doing it, right? And quite delicious. And if you can add some of the fruit around, yeah. So you can have a really beautiful feast, right? You can add other things as well. Yeah, that's a good question though. Yeah.
You were mentioning the sentence, how to find meaning in the stone shuffling.
Yeah.
And I would like to ask you, can you say something, how to find meaning in those typical daily things, if it's easy to digest that?
Yeah.
What is it that you say a sentence like that? Because I also understand it if you have found meaning in it.
Yeah, yes, of course.
So what do you relate to, or where does the meaning come from?
Right, so I think for me, the question is so the idea is to find the meaning, the question of why are we here? Like, what's our purpose, right? So the reading you did from Kohelet, I'll just see if I have it here. Pay attention that you do not corrupt and destroy my world, because if you corrupt it, there's no one to repair it after you, right? So I think when we look at the question of why are we here, one of our assignments, perhaps as humans, is to make sure, because we have so much power, like we keep saying, no, we're small, but we're not small. We're actually like teenagers, very powerful and not quite sure how to use our power, I would say, right? Hopefully we'll grow up. But at this point, we're very powerful, but there is a disconnect between our abilities and our understanding. So we have to be really careful with what we do, because anything that we do can actually really ruin creation. You know, Kohelet Rabbah is an ancient text. If I remember correctly, it's about 1,500 years old, maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less, but it's not relating to our current environmental crisis. It's relating to previous things that people did. People already noticed that we can wipe out animals, we can cause extinction, we can cause huge fires, we can cause huge contamination of spaces, we can ruin very deeply. So the question is, how do we make sure that we tread very softly? So for instance, and it can be big things, and it can be but it starts with little things, right? It starts with, how am I responsible for my neighbors to begin with? So like snow shoveling is almost prosaic, but to make sure that people have the ability to walk on the sidewalk is prosaic, but it means that we can maintain a neighborhood society. Okay, yeah. It means that my neighbor who might need assistance walking is able to go through my area of the sidewalk, right? Otherwise they wouldn't be able to. So it's like, do we talk about these things? Like it's a small thing, but it's actually a huge thing, because it enables a city to maintain itself, thereby enabling civilization to maintain itself, right? So we start with the little thing. It's like you throw away the peel of the orange, but actually that's what holds the orange together, right? Otherwise the orange would just fall apart in a sense and be harmed, right? So we need to notice these things. Do I need to finish? Yeah, okay. Okay, because I was, yeah. So Tu B'Shvat, this is like really a short, like you could talk for a whole semester about Tu B'Shvat, because it has so many layers. But I think it's really about this yearning to connect to a place where you feel at home, one layer. It's about a yearning to connect to the world, because as humans, we have a tendency to fly into our minds. So it's about a yearning to connect to the world, okay? To feel at home in the world and to remember our responsibility at home in the world. This is where it's going now. This is where Tu B'Shvat is going now. And it's also a wonderful celebration of winter, because, it gives some hope. The trees will bloom. The shkedia will, blossom. It has a beautiful smell if you ever see an almond tree. Yeah, and that's about it for Tu B'Shvat. Thank you very much for listening. Did you want to do a meditation? Yeah, so so we'll have music in a second for a meditation. So I just thought we would do a very simple meditation. You've all done this before, I'm sure. But as you listen to the music, just notice your body as you're sitting comfortably in a way that's comfortable for you. Notice your breathing as you're breathing comfortably. Notice the air moving in you. And just notice the way your feet connect into the earth. And imagine through your feet, through the roots that go down into the earth, remember what's feeding you, okay? Like your history, your family traditions, chosen family traditions, whatever nourishes you through your roots, going back to ancient times. The more than human world that nourishes us through our roots. And then as you're breathing, notice this nourishing coming up in you and feeding your present here in the center of your body and moving through your body, all this nourishment. And who are you being nourished through at this time? The humans, the more than humans, your close family, or coming at you from, through your branches and your leaves. Today, now, who are you helping to protect? Who are you helping to nourish? What are you giving back? And then just think of the fruit that's flying from you and coming out of you and growing new things in the world.
I'm sorry, I did not bring white and red wine. That was a real, yeah, oh, well. I was so interested by what you said about the shells, because when I was, reading a little bit about the festival, it did mention nuts in the shell was really important. But Safeway did not have any nuts in the shell, so, except peanuts, and that wasn't a thing. So, so pretend, please, that we did break those shells and think about what the shells do. Okay. So Janice is going to be back now to read some closing words, and then we're going to sing again.
Okay, these closing words are from the book of Isaiah in the Old Testament. For you shall go out in joy and be led back in peace. The mountains and the hills before you shall burst into song, and all the trees of the field shall clap their hands.
Hannah, we're going to go right to Shabbat Shalom to sing. So we're not doing this particular song. There we go. All right, hit it. Thank you. Here are the words of Elizabeth Sella Jones. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. After the postlude, please stay for special refreshments and conversation. I just noticed Janice played that from memory.
I did it by memory.
Oh,
But
wonderful.
Shabbat Shalom.
It was wonderful. I felt like dancing. All right, thank you.
Next Sunday's pop.
Oh, next Sunday is our potluck, our second Sunday potluck. Please join us. Bring a pot or some luck. There we go. All right. Thank you.